not to my recollection.
Did you ask for information relating to other projects that might be similarly situated?
Not to my recollection. I mean, the Riverfront was discussed, but other than that, I don't believe we asked for others. But again, I wasn't the only one asking the question, so I don't think I asked specifically.
Well, do you recall there being a conversation about projects other than
I don't. I recall a conversation or some discussion about the Riverfront. I do not recall whether or not we asked about specific projects, and I don't believe that they provided any response to the Riverfront or any discussion of other projects, but that's just my recollection.
And have you spoken to the project engineer for Riverfront developers?
No.
Can I have a proffer as to what this has to do with my site plan review?
Well, I'm exploring on cross-examination the fact that this issue was raised on direct. This issue was raised because, again,
You're far afield. You're far afield from what was raised on direct. You're asking about all kinds of things that have nothing to do with what was raised on direct. And I'm willing to give you a lot of leeway, but I'm asking you to give me a proffer as to how any of this information relates to whether to recommend approval of this site plan or what kind of conditions should be imposed, other than what we already know, that it requires DEP approval. So what he talked to about DEP, what happened in Riverfront, the River Edge, how does that relate to whether I should or shouldn't recommend approval of this site plan subject to conditions? You can answer that question. I'm going to let you go as far as you want to go. And I would ask you to gear your questions to elicit information that's relevant to that question, whether to grant or deny, recommend to grant or deny approval, and or what conditions should be imposed if approval is to be recommended.
again, Mr. Eisler, I think we probably have a fundamental. I'm sorry, that's Mr. Eisler. This is hearing examiner Wolfson.
And I've let you go well over an hour on this, on DEP stuff. That's a lot of time on something that everybody knows is subject to DEP approval.
Well, in fairness, we spent a day with direct examination of Mr. Dipple, and a great majority of the exhibits as well as the testimony related to DEP permits and the flood hazard area permit and a discussion of the flood of the elevation of the roadway. And when I objected to the testimony as to Riverfront and the Bergen County project, the response from council was that Mr. Morin's contesting this as part of site suitability, and so that's what the proffer was for. So I'm delving into that issue.
I don't remember it that way, and I don't remember ever.
I'll read it for the record. I put it in the letter I sent to you.
Site suitability is not an issue for me. That's an issue that was already resolved by the judge, rightly or wrongly. I've given you a lot of leeway. I didn't just cut you off after one question. Your entire morning from 11 until 12:30 was on essentially the DEP, with the one exception. You asked one question about the elevation of the road impact up or downstream, and then I asked why he had the conclusion that he had, which you objected to as net. Those are the only two questions that related to raising the road. That's fair game. I've been waiting for an hour and a half or more for you to address that question, because that's a legitimate question that's been referred to me that, frankly, I haven't heard a lot of evidence about. But I don't need to hear a lot of evidence about whether the DEP will approve it, they won't approve it, what the regulations mean, what they don't approve, whatever they are, they are. And I don't have any control over them, and neither does anybody else in this room. And everybody knows if I'm going to recommend an approval of the site plan, or some version of it, it's going to have to be subject to DEP approval. They will resolve those questions. Nothing that Mr. Dipple says or Mr. Marsden says is going to change that. Any approval is going to be subject to what they say. And whether you or they appeal what DEP does or doesn't do, that's not for me to decide either. So let's try to bring it into the issues that relate to the site plan, please.
I will, and I'm pretty much done with this line of questioning, but again,
Thank you. Please move on.
The issue relates to the legal issue, the substantive issue that's been referred for your evaluation or recommendation to the court, and that's why I'm exploring these issues. This is not just a referral of
Please move on.
site plan. sanitary sewer. That's an issue, it's a site plan issue.
My turn became dead.
They left, I don't know what happened. I'm just on the mic from my camera and the one over there. The one over there doesn't do a lot of good because there's nothing coming out of the speaker.
Now, Mr. Morrison had raised questions in his July 20th, 2012 memo, which previously been before the hearing examiner here is D4. The comment from the township engineer related to the additional sanitary sewer flows that would be added to this new system would express our already old system. And he further goes on to say, what's the guarantee that the added flow of 260 dwelling units will not accelerate the deterioration of our piping system? And he refers to the sanitary sewer capacity study that we discussed in your direct examination, which is marked as A17. And he characterizes that report as saying that there were indications that 3 sections of the piping system were inadequate. Do you agree with that statement?
I initially said that there were 3 in the report, and I believe we did additional field survey and found that it was actually only 2.
Other than the testimony you provided on the 8th, 9th, have you provided any additional reports that confirm that in fact it would be 2 sections of pipe and not 3?
I don't believe I submitted anything formal. I've done the calculations, and I may have something in my files that indicate that, but it is my recollection that I recommended to Peter Hakimian that we survey the downstream inverts of the sanitary sewer system to some extent to see if the municipal mapping is actually correct. We did that, and it is my recollection that one of the pipe slopes, as indicated on the township maps, was incorrect.